This is Cars and Bids, and today we are going to talk about survivor cars. Cars and Bids has done very well with survivor cars, and by that I mean cars that are maybe at least 10 years old that have been preserved beautifully, but you're like, why? Like a lot of people save Ferraris and Ford GT, those cars are always survivors. But why would someone save some of these cars? Well, they've done very well on Cars and Bids. Well-preserved cars you wouldn't think would be well-preserved. And today I'm going to go over like our top 7 or so sales of some amazing survivor cars on Cars and Bids. Okay, so let's talk survivor cars. And by the way, if you have a survivor car, sell it with Cars and Bids. I think you'll get the most money. We have just had an enormous amount of success with these, mostly because when I see survivor cars show up on Cars and Bids, I get very excited and I start commenting and tweeting it out, and then it always gets to a big audience. And anyway, let's start with the most obvious survivor car that has done well, this 1992 Infiniti Q45, which sold for $27,000. This was a pretty impressive sale, but it probably shouldn't have been. First off, this car is under 9,000 miles. It probably is the nicest first-gen Q45 left in existence. I truly mean that. Someone in the comments mentioned that Infiniti has one of these that they brought to Pebble Beach the other year, and it didn't look as nice as this one. And I mean, you look at the seats and it's pristine. This is truly probably the best Q45 from this era that's left. And for those who don't know, the Q45 was like a rival to the original Lexus LS. It was like the first Japanese luxury sedan to come to the States. You had the Q45 and you had the Lexus LS. Now LS has gone on to a lot of fame over the years as such a special car. Q45 has kind of languished a little bit. Well, maybe the languishing is over. This one sells for $27,000. Now I mentioned the price is pretty surprising, but truthfully there were like 4 bidders at the end all going for it. These are people who are nostalgic for like this early 90s special car. Maybe their parents had one or family or whatever, and here's your chance to get probably the nicest one in the world. And the thing I like about these survivor cars is, in Cars and Bids, our staff, we always say, find a better one. The car like this, if you really want a nice Q45, this is it. This is the nicest one you'll find. And maybe years before another one this nice comes up, if it even exists. So $27,000, big sale, but for a special car, truly, I think the nicest one of these left. Preserved so well. Okay, next up, another great survivor car we recently sold on Cars and Bids, this 2000 BMW 750iL. Sold for just under $26,000 with just over 30,000 miles. E38 selling for $26,000. Wow, that's a lot. But this car is best of breed. You have late production, which everybody wants in the E38s. They looked the best. They had refined a lot of stuff. You got a V12. Everybody wants that too. And it's actually kind of funny. Most cars, the V12 is known for being the problematic, questionable one. In the 7 Series, the E38s, it was the V8 that had the timing chain guide tensioner problems. The V12s have kind of emerged as the more reliable of the two. This car was just really beautifully preserved. 30,000 miles. Really, really nice example of this car. And it's rare you find a nice E38 anymore. And there are a lot of BMW enthusiasts who loved the late 90s, early 2000s BMW. It was by far the brand's best time in terms of their overall lineup, and the E38 is generally considered one of the best luxury sedans ever made. And this was a great one, and it was a nice one, and it sold for big money because nice, great cars do that. And again, find another one. You're never going to find another 30,000 mile E38 750iL. You might, but it might take 4 years. And during that time, you could be driving this 750iL if you had paid $25,600 for it. Okay, next up, another great survivor car, this 1990 Jeep Grand Wagoneer. We sold this 79,000 miles, unmodified, and it sold for $27,500, Baltic Blue. Grand Wagoneers are interesting. When I was a kid, Grand Wagoneers were used cars and nobody wanted. But the few people who preserved them, either through luck or foresight, mostly luck, are being rewarded handsomely right now because everybody wants them. SUVs are very hot. I've mentioned this a million times on this channel. Off-roaders are very hot. Everybody wants like cool looking SUVs, a vintage cool car that you can bring the whole family in. And that's the Grand Wagoneer. These late production Grand Wagoneers, 88 to 91, these are the ones everybody wants with the overhead console from the minivans. It was like the most modernized end of the line. And finding one of these in this condition, in this color, unmodified, with only 78,000 miles, 79,000, this is it. I mean, this is what you pay up for. And someone did. $27,500 is a lot of money. These were $8,000 cars 10 years ago, but that was 10 years ago. Life has changed. And if you have a survivor like this that has survived this cleanly, you're going to do well. And this sale was strong of a beautiful car. Frankly, I kind of wanted it myself, but I can't buy them all. And whoever bought this, congratulations. It's a really special car. These are wonderful, and they're getting very hard to find in nice shape. Some companies are trying to restore them and sell them for huge money, but unrestored Survivor cars are very special as well, and this one brought good money. Next up, here's a Survivor I never expected to see on Cars and Bids. 1989 Merkur Scorpio. Merkur, that was the actual way you were supposed to pronounce it. This was a Ford brand, and they came out with this word, Merkur, that was supposed to sound European and give the car this air of class. The truth is, it was just a Ford Scorpio that was brought over from Europe and then rebadged and sold here as the Merkur Scorpio, trying to make it seem all European. This car was amazing. I mean, it was just unreal. 19,000 miles, sold for $12,500. Got to be the highest Merkur sale, especially of a Scorpio in any recent ever, maybe. maybe even back then they weren't selling for that much. But this car, it was in perfect condition. I mean, truly, I've said this already in this video, but I really believe it for this car, the nicest one of these in existence. You will never find another Merkur Scorpio with 19,000 miles, with the seats looking this nice. Very impressive car. And I guess the guy who bought it was like an enthusiast of these cars, and he was happy to pay up because he knows how rare it is, and he knows he's never going to find another one of these. Just an unusual car, this weird thing that Ford tried to sound more European, and to have one of these survive this well. I mean, this isn't a car that anybody's put in a museum, because Ford closed down the Merkur brand, so they don't want anything to do with these cars. It's just for enthusiasts of weird cars like me. So when this came on the site, you know, there's like Corvettes and all the, you know, the M5s on the site, and I look at this and I'm like, oh my God! And I still think that, actually, as I'm looking at the pictures right now. I cannot believe this car was in such amazing condition. And that's what happens. You know, these are $3,000 cars on Craigslist, and they're in rough shape. A nice one delivers, because if you want it, you're never going to find another. A great Survivor. Okay, next up, here's another interesting Survivor car that did well on the site. 2007 Hummer H2. With 21,000 miles, sold for $48,000. I gotta say, I never thought that Hummer H2s would hold their value. You see what happens to Chevy Tahoes as they get older. They become worthless. Nobody wants that. You know, a 20-year-old Tahoe, late 90s, early 2000s ones, they're rough, nobody wants it. It's not true of Hummers. And it's funny because everybody, when the H2 came out, was like, oh, the H2 is just a rebadged Tahoe. Well, that was never true. The H2 had more capability than the Tahoe did, considerably more, but it wasn't an H1, and people were paying a lot of money for these H2s that just were so in your face, and they looked ridiculous. Well, now they're still bringing a lot of money. This particular one, it wasn't a Survivor in the sense that it was like totally clean and never messed with. It had big wheels, it had a couple of modifications, but it was a Survivor in the sense it only had 20,000 miles, and it was in really nice shape. And it's hard to find nice H2s. There are a lot of higher mileage ones that are kind of ratty, but this was a nice one. And it brought $40,000. That's what people pay for a really nice H2. And it's another example of, well, if you want another one, you know, you're trolling the websites looking for a Hummer H2. They come up with 100,000 miles, 150,000 miles, 180,000 miles. Well, here's one with 20. So if you want it, you pay up, because that's the thing. And that's one of the reasons Survivor cars have done so well. Okay, next up, here's another good example of a Survivor car. This 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser sold for $26,000. This car had 144,000 miles on it, sold for $26,000. That gives you an idea of what the Land Cruiser market is like right now. I don't actually think that this particular Land Cruiser is any better of representation of the market than some of the others we've had. It was just a recent sale, so I'm pulling it up. We've sold several in this price range, honestly. This is what people are paying for 80 series Land Cruisers. It's very difficult to find these in nice shape. A lot of them have 400,000 miles. The seats are falling apart. They look terrible. They need a motor at this point. I mean, it's all rough. When you find a nice one, and in the Land Cruiser world, 144,000 miles might as well be zero. That car, everybody knows that car's got another 140,000 miles easy before you start having to do really big stuff. And so $26,000, that doesn't seem crazy at all to me, especially because this one had the factory locker and it's from the final year. This is a special car, and these that have survived, another good example, find another one. 80 series Land Cruisers are very difficult to find, and I'm always thrilled when we have a really nice one come on the site. We've had several, and I'm always thrilled when they bring big money because they deserve it. It's hard to find these in really nice shape, and that proves, again, our success with these Survivor cars. Okay, next up, another good example of a Survivor that did well. It's 1984 Honda CRX, sold for $13,300. This was a pretty impressive one because it wasn't an SI, which is the high performance version. It had about 100,000 miles on it, so it wasn't like super ultra low mileage, but it still brought $13,000. Two reasons for that. Number one, these are cool, again. The CRX, kind of went away because it wasn't that practical and people weren't buying them. The sporty fun had kind of ended. But now there's this nostalgia factor and Survivors are hard to find. Nice CRXs are very, very hard to find these days. SI or not. You want a good CRX, you're going to pay. And this one was expensive. And this was just a great car. 4-spoke wheels, blue exterior, blue interior. I mean, I'm just looking at these pictures right now. And I'm so into this car. It was such a great car. And it exceeded the seller's expectations considerably for what they thought they were going to get for it. And obviously it exceeded mine, but that's what happens with some of these Survivor cars. You never think a Q45 is going to sell for 27 grand. 5 years ago, I would have said an 80 series Land Cruiser for 26. What kind of idiot would pay that? Now it's like, how can I get more? Because I know it's going to be worth 36 in a few years. And Survivor cars are just hard to find. And this CRX is just a great example. And it's another fantastic Survivor on Cars and Bids. Okay, one more and then I'll stop. Although truthfully, these Survivor cars are some of my favorite cars that we sell on Cars and Bids. I could go for days. But I want to talk about this 2004 Lincoln Town Car. What a beautiful car. Panther platform cars are interesting. Panther fans online, they're always like, oh, I wish they brought back the Panther, man. I'd buy one. I'd buy a new one. Well, this was a chance. Here was a one-owner 04 Lincoln Town Car with 8,000 miles. Essentially new. Landau roof. How can you go wrong? Little silver accents over the wheel wells. I mean, this was bought by a guy who knew he was buying his final car, and he wanted the best thing Lincoln had. And so he got this. So here was someone's chance to buy a new Panther again. Well, it sold for $12,400. Which frankly is all the money for Panthers. I mean, they don't bring that much. So all these people who claim they would buy one if Ford brought it back, yeah, they wouldn't actually. But they wouldn't pay 12 grand for one. So this is a very, very nice Panther car that sold. And I was really happy with this one. The seller requested the reserve. It sold for over reserve, of course. It's just, again, another Survivor. Where are you going to find another 8,000 mile Lincoln Town Car? It's actually not that hard to find Survivor Town Cars because older people did buy them and they're kind of dying off in some sense. And so there's a few here and there. But in 5 years, there won't be any. And in 10 years, we'll look back on this and go, I can't believe there's only 12 grand. It's a rear wheel drive body on frame Panther. What a cool car for that money. And I wonder what the buyer's going to do with it. I mean, you could drive it as a new car and probably get another 15 years out of it, no problem. Or you could save it as the ultimate Panther. But another great Survivor on Cars and Bids. So those are a few of the Survivor cars we've had on Cars and Bids. This is some of my favorite stuff. When I do a lot of the submissions, when people submit the cars to the site, and when Survivors come in, a lot of times I just get lost in the photos. Like, wow, this 200SX. Or wow, this Marauder, or whatever. I mean, I can't believe how nice it looks now. I can't believe someone preserved what it is. And not the Marauder, that car deserves to be preserved. But anyway, the point is, it's rare to see these cars. When they come in, we try to take them every time because there's a nostalgia factor here. And people see these and they say, oh, I want that. I want that from my childhood. This might be my last chance to get one. It might be my last chance to get an unrestored Baltic Blue Grand Wagoneer. Or it might be my last chance to get like a 20,000 mile Hummer H2. I wanted that when I was a kid, a teenager. Now I can afford it. I'm going to get it. And so we love those kind of cars here. They sell always, and they're just cool always. So those are Survivor cars. If you have one, again, sell it with Cars and Bids. I would love to see it. Even if you just submit it so I can look at the pictures, I would love to see it. I love seeing these ultra low mileage cars. And that's that. Survivors.